Hey, this is Ken Curtis. I always, I always try to show that little Bambi deer right there. Uh, that deer, its mama was giving birth, and she kind of freaked out. She ran out in front of traffic, and she got hit. That happened right in front of me, and I can't believe I have to explain this, but because other people said, "Damn, you wear a dirty shirt and this and that and the other," not realizing I just came in from cutting the grass or whatever. But that Bambi deer was like half out of its mama, and I snatched it the rest of the way out and wiped the slime from it, and I tried to save its life so I could carry it to the Yellow River Game Ranch and they could raise it. I wasn't able to, of course, as you can see. So I decided instead I'd wrap it up in a towel and took it to the taxidermy. But that was literally on the day that deer was being born. For those that might be interested in that sort of thing, just saying. Uh, I'm on here today. I have to talk to people about certain dreams that I have, because the dreams that I have are not nefarious. They're not. They're not mean in any way. They're not the kind of dream that you would say, well, I don't know where the source of that is. Because all of the dreams that I have, I wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Wow, I got to write that down, they're always either life-saving or safety-oriented or, quite frankly, world-oriented things that can be done to help the world. And this last one in particular, uh, I had a dream about, using gunshot detectors in schools so that the parents didn't have to worry about the teachers having day-to-day access to their guns. But if the gunshot detector went off, it would automatically open up a secret cabinet within the teachers' rooms that are certified and trained with weaponry, and they could put on their bulletproof vest and have access to communication with the police department and maybe some flashbangs or something to slow down a school shooter, basically. And of course, with training with their weapons and what have you, they could maybe even save some lives. Uh, that particular dream, when it came to me, I immediately wanted to send it to a friend of mine to see if he would do the wiring schematic on it. And as I was doing that, I put it on a Facebook, person to person, not public. I put it private, person to person. And as I was writing it and stuff, and I just got done and went to hit the send button. Right as I was hitting the send button, all of a sudden this attachment attached to my post. And I read the attachment to see what it was. And it said india.gov.edu. And it dawned on me, that's intellectual property theft. And let me explain that. All of the internet giants of America made deals with, quite frankly, some pretty nefarious people in our own government. And what they did is they worked it out where the American people that worked in Silicon Valley, many of them were given their walking orders, basically. But they were told, you either train your foreign replacement or you lose your severance package. And so they were forced to train their foreign replacements, which of course were people that would do the job cheaply from India. And at the same time that was happening, Hillary Clinton was over in India telling the people, and this is a quote, and you can quote me on this, telling the people of India, oh, Americans are just jealous because they know they can't do as well in America as you can. Keep that in mind while we continue. Oh, and look at that, I knew. See, the minute I said some stuff like that, they're doing to this low connection. They basically they're messing with my post. Anybody that's I could go on, but there's lots of them. Probably even Candace Owens, and I know for sure that David Harris has to deal with it. They mess with his post frequently too. But anyway, so here I am. Here I am just trying to get it out to the world because to me it's an important aspect of what needs to be done in the world today. We have a lot, and I mean a lot of uh, just just things that people don't think about in a true perspective. We shouldn't be having to deal with some of this stuff that we're dealing with. And I have a theory about what was really going on in Syria. People aren't going to like hearing it probably because, we all like to think that our government's good people and that they wouldn't do anything horrible or terrible or what have you. But in reality, I think the war was not only purposeful for oil to start with, which I think most people probably would agree with that. The Bushes worked with their operatives from the Middle East to create the situation that would be the call to war and what have you. I don't think that that's an unusual or even an uncommon belief in America today. I think that most people are awake. They know what's been going on. They know how it's been going on. They know everything about, the allegations of drug dealings from El Chapo to, payoffs and what have you to the different kind of things that are taking place today in the world. And so my point and my objective in this particular post is to tell people, when I get a dream at 3 o'clock in the morning and I wake up and I have to write it down, it's not a dream that I feel any negativity about where it came from, because in all honesty, the place that these dreams come from, to me anyway, have already proven themselves as to be a good source. And what I mean by that is, it's like the gunshot detectors. Those were to save lives. That particular dream was to save lives. And I'll give you another one. I had a dream about when I saw people jumping from a 10-story building to their death. I had a dream about, because I climb trees for a living. I had a dream about, not ascending, but descending devices that could lowerly descend people to the ground without them being injured. And that's something that could easily be done with a mechanism that, that you can't open unless the fire alarm goes off. It's kind of like the gunshot detectors. The teachers wouldn't be able to open up their safes. That way the parents wouldn't have to be concerned with teachers having day-to-day access to their weapons. And even in that dream, there was like, how many people can you get into a phone booth? There was a room that the teachers' weapons were in that had bulletproof glass and what have you throughout the room. And it was like a safe room for the students. So there was just as many students from the school packed into that one room where the teacher was there with their weapons and their, communication with police and bulletproof vests and everything else that you might imagine would help them stop an intruder that was there to do harm. So I don't have questions as to where these dreams come from. I'm a religious person, so I have to kind of question that myself, because we all know that we got the devil on one shoulder and we got God on the other, and we kind of have to distinguish between the two. And so I always have that in the back of my mind as to, where's the source of this dream coming from. And so my point is, I don't have to question the source of these dreams. My most recent dream, and it's very important that I get this out to the public, because I think it's really borderline on a point of no return for the aspect of what it is that I'm talking about. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. In 1938, our government was going into World War II. They knew they were going into World War II, and so they were making a deal with the oil conglomerates of the day. Now, the oil conglomerates of the day had invested billions when it was unusual to invest millions in pumping, first locating, then pumping, and then refining, and then transporting around the world, and then distribution of their product. So we're talking about people who had billions invested in oil and crude oil. The problem with crude oil is crude oil comes up from the ground, and there's a lot of stuff in it, like heavy metals and just different toxins that are in that no matter how you refine it, you're not going to get the stuff that's in it out of it. It's just the way it is. And coal's a lot like that too. I mean, I don't want to bash the people who want to work the coal mines and that sort of thing, but in reality, that it is a lot similar to that. Which brings me to my post. In 1938, when they were going into World War II, and they wanted to make sure with the oil conglomerates that they had a supply of oil in order to fight the Nazi war regime that was building up. One of the contingencies of the deal they made with the oil conglomerates was that the hemp plant, or you might call it marijuana today, was made illegal. Now, at that particular point in time, marijuana wasn't really a very strong drug. Let's face it, because they didn't know yet that if they starved the plant from the pollen that makes the seed, it's the THC, which is the psychotropic drug of the plant, that actually makes the seed of the plant. So, when you take a hemp plant in its natural form, the plant doesn't have a lot of THC in it. And that's why you talk to some old timer, if you were to be one of those kind of people that, that smoked it or whatever, and you talk to an old timer and they'll tell you, oh, that ragweed from years ago couldn't even get you high. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about here. Although I actually believe that they could even eliminate the THC altogether by just doing a little bioengineering on the plant to get the plant to produce the biggest, most prominent seed that it can produce. And the reason you want that is because the seed is what we're talking about here, or at least it's partially what we're talking about here. The seed of the hemp plant is a massive oil production. And what it does is every bit of the oil that comes from the seed can be used in every single aspect of crude oil. It can be made into diesel. It can be used to make grease. It can be used for lubrication. And better than any of it, it can be used for a biodegradable plastic. And when I say that, I don't just mean it jokingly or whatever. We have plastic in our ocean now that are 100 miles long and 50 miles wide, and some of that plastic's 50 years old and really, really toxic. And when the fish and stuff get into it, they just get toxified, and it makes them sick. And if it doesn't kill them, it's just not good any way you cut it. And we're dumping an extra. Someone said 300 tons, but I'm kind of thinking it's 30 tons of plastic extra every single year getting dumped into the ocean. Now, when you take those facts into consideration, what if all of that plastic was made by a biodegradable, environmentally friendly plastic that not only if the fish got into it, they could actually eat it and it would make them healthier? You see where I'm going? So this is the main reason that this particular product should be produced. Now, I can tell you, if I even come close to making this post, I get all kinds of flack from the people that want to produce their hemp for the purpose of getting high. We're talking the medical dispensary people, okay? They don't like hearing this because they know what I'm saying is true. If you're growing a hemp for seed, it can cross-pollinate their plant and ruin it, because they're growing a plant without seed. In other words, they pull up the male plants so that they can't seed the female plants, so that the female plants have a much higher THC content, which is the psychotropic drug that gets people high. Well, let me put them all at ease, okay? Nobody's out to screw up your little game thing you got going on about growing medical marijuana or even recreational marijuana. Nobody wants to stop you from creating your recreational marijuana. What I'm talking about is having desalination factories on the coast, okay? They're round. This is in my dream. They're round, okay? They have pinwheel generators up underneath them, okay? These pinwheel generators, because they're round and they're anchored through the center, the way the ocean tide moves and curves and goes around these plants, the generators are constantly spinning, whether the tide's coming in or whether the tide's going out, or whether it's relatively calm but it's just kind of floating around. It makes these pinwheel generators create the electricity that's necessary for the desalination process and for the pumps that are to pump the clean water, the desalinated water, thousands of miles inland to inland farms. Now the inland farms, in my objective, is because hemp it's already been proven through the narco series. They found water in the desert, and then they grew sinsemilla, which we're not talking about sinsemilla here, we're talking about seed. But they grew the same plant now. They grew that plant in the desert. So we know it can be done, okay? So what I'm talking about is sending this clean water thousands of miles inland to desert property. Now, there's a couple things that can be done with killing more birds with one stone. One is they could have in the ground homes with the pre-irrigated water that's cool coming off of the ocean, where all they would need is a fan behind a radiator to cool off an in-the-ground desert home. If they're made properly and it's all done in conjunction, there could be housing for all kinds of these street people. And look, they could work the farm right there. The farm's right there where they could go work the farm. They could make sure that that the plants are taken care of properly and what have you. And so my point is, everything can be solved with the proper solution. Now, so we've talked about the desalination factories. They are interchangeable. If one has a problem, they tugboat it out of the way. They bring another one in. They take that one, they put it up on a rack, they fix the problems. Voila, they can bring it back in and use it somewhere else or whatever. But they can also tugboat these factories out of harm's way. If they know there's a big storm coming that might do damage to them, they can get them out of harm's way. What I saw in my dream sounds kind of crazy, but they had like cotton candy covered lids, like plastic lids over the top of them. And they were set up in a way that in my dream I saw a storm hitting them and it just like rolled over and was back on its feet. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically they were incapable of being capsized in my dream. Not to say that can't happen in real life. I'm just saying that's what I saw in my dream. And there was that big pole that went up through the center of them, and it had a swivel on it, which of course they unhook all that stuff if there's a storm coming in to make sure that there's not an issue. But that swivel that is on the top was that clean water that's getting sent inland. And it starts out with like a fireman's hose, and then it goes to a hard line, and the hard line goes inland for thousands of miles to the desert farms. Now the desert farms are growing hemp for the purpose of using the seed. They strip the plant of all the seed for oil. And that oil, as I said before, can be used in every exact aspect of crude oil today. There isn't one single difference of that oil than crude oil, except that when you burn crude oil, you come up with something called monoxide. When you burn hemp oil, you come up with something called dioxide. Now, we all know, if we studied any kind of 6th grade science class, that dioxide and monoxide are two different things. And I already told you, put a guy in a car, hook a muffler up to it, what's going to happen? He dies, right? Well, our atmospheric bubble is only 2.5 miles high. So the more mufflers that go into this atmospheric bubble, the more chance is that everybody gets slower and kind of lethargic, and they're not feeling good, and it's like that scorpion sting to the stomach thing. We're being poisoned, people. We're being poisoned by the monoxide created by big oil. And the sad part about that is those 100-mile strips of plastic in the ocean that are 50 miles wide, guess what? They knew about it in 19 38. They did it at the perils of their own children. Not without benefit to their children, of course, but still. Think about what I'm saying. And you kind of have to give them a little bit of a break because, let's face it, they had billions invested where most people wouldn't have had millions invested. And it was unbearable to think about throwing away their $1 billion worth of investments because they had a smart scientist over here saying, hey guys, you could do just as good with this cash crop that produces oil that's not dangerous to the environment. You follow me? All right. And so we go back to what part of my dream was. They're forcing people out of Syria. And I don't believe this is about war. I don't believe it's about any of that stuff. It's just like everybody always says. It always boils down to money. And it always boils down to not just money, but the oil mongers. We're starting to find out there's a great big awakening taking place. People are starting to realize, we're pointing at the Democrats are pointing at the Republicans and so on and so forth, when in reality, who should we be pointing at? The oligarchs, the oil mongers, the warmongers, the guys that want perpetual war because that's how they make their money. The guys who want to do anything, whatever it is, to keep that cash flow coming from oil. And they don't care if they kill millions of people in order to make that happen. It doesn't matter to them so long as they still keep their little cash flow coming. And I don't say little because it's little. I say just in their little minds, that's what it amounts to. So let me get back to the desalination factory sends clean water, desalinated water, thousands of miles inland to inland farms. And on those inland farms is a plant being grown. It's called a hemp plant. They strip the seed from the hemp plant. And then they can take the stalk of that plant and they can chop it up into little bitty pieces. They can burn that in a coal burning facility in order to make electricity. Only it's not just any coal burning facility, okay? Because the coal burning facility that you think of when you think of a coal burning facility burns that same thing I was talking about, that coal that comes from underneath the ground, that quite frankly is really, really toxic. And even these animals above my head, they don't survive in toxic environments. And you can, if it even starts to get a little bit too toxic of an environment, you can see where it affects them. They start getting cysts all over their body and that sort of thing. Older deer, I'm just saying, because I've butchered my own deer my whole life. I was raised on a dairy farm, and the day I saw how they acted, we're talking milk cows, the day I saw how they acted when the meat man walked in, from that day forward, I didn't really have any trouble going out there and hunting and butchering my own deer because they don't see it coming. And I have to take into consideration, if you ever went to where they slaughter beef, you'll understand what I'm saying. My way's 110,000 times more humane. But anyway, getting back to what I want to get to. The plant itself produces the seed for the oil. All right. Then if it's burned in a coal type burning facility, we're talking about these facilities going to be built different than coal burning facilities because they're going to have a filter system that is automated and it cleans itself on a regular basis robotically. And this is all in my dream because I got to see the mechanical arms moving the different screens back and forth and what have you. And so as soon as one gets registered, it needs to be cleaned, it gets cleaned, so on and so forth. But the thing that was amazing about it is they were doing something that I would have never imagined. They were capturing the hydrogen gas that was being produced while the plant was being burned. You get that? The the hydrogen gas that was being produced while the plant was being burned. That hydrogen gas was then being compressed into a compressed gas. Well, let me ask anybody out there to stop and think about it for a minute. What toxic thing comes from hydrogen gas being burned? Anybody? Nobody wrote anything here? Say, oh, I know the answer to that. Let me tell you what gets produced when you burn hydrogen gas. Water. That's the most toxic thing that comes out of hydrogen gas. Water. So you can see what I'm saying here, okay? This is the important part, though. I don't want to leave this out. Okay. We know that the hemp plant produces more bulk than any other plant on earth. The closest plant to the hemp plant is the cane sugar plant, and it is 10% of what the hemp plant produces for bulk, which is to say the energy of its growth and what have you, the speed and energy that it grows is 10% of what the hemp plant is. Now I'm going to ask you a serious question that I really don't know the answer to. This all needs to be studied. There's a couple things that need to be studied. One is, what is the conversion rate of monoxide to oxygen? The other is, what's the difference between the conversion rate of monoxide to oxygen and dioxide to oxygen? Because we're talking about two different base chemicals that still need to be converted to oxygen. And does monoxide even get converted? Could that be the carbon that's building up in our atmosphere? And how much more of that buildup do we need before we're all suffocating from it? Just saying. But the main thing I want to talk about is the conversion rate of the fastest growing plant, bulk producing plant on Earth. If I'm correct, and I believe I am because I can ace the Mensa test and I'm rarely wrong about stuff like this, the conversion rate of dioxide to oxygen with that plant is, because it's the fastest growing plant there is, it coincides or coalesces with the dioxide to oxygen rate. Did you catch that? What I'm saying here, and it's a very important statement, if I'm correct, the hemp plant produces.
Hey.
Could you give me a minute or two, please? Could you give me a minute or two, please? A minute or two?
You can wait 5 seconds for me to tell you this. Malcolm left his phone. I'm leaving it right here. She'll be by tomorrow to pick it up.
All right. Who?
Malcolm, the lady.
Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know. It's just right at this important point of my post. If I'm correct, and as I said before, I rarely am wrong about stuff like this, the fastest growing plant that converts dioxide to oxygen, which it does, what if that particular plant does that conversion rate, as we just were talking about, the cane sugar plant's only 1/10 of it, what if it also converts dioxide to oxygen 90% better than any other plant? See, usually these kind of numbers coincide. And that's why I'm saying, imagine deserts, and not all of them, because, you know, we don't want to eliminate desert life, of course, you know. But imagine deserts, and I don't, that's why I don't say useless desert, because, you know, there are organisms that live in the desert and they need to be protected, some of them. But what I'm saying, imagine if deserts were flourishing with greenery, right? And that greenery that you see it flourishing in the desert converts dioxide to oxygen better than any other plant on Earth. You see? That's my point. And I know all the pot growers are going, oh my God, what is he saying? Oh, look at all the trouble we go through to keep the male plants from cross-pollinating with our females so we can have our sinsemilla and blah, blah, blah. Guys, calm down. My whole concept is pumping this water thousands of miles inland to deserts where you're not going to be growing your product to start with. You follow me? There can even be little bylaws set up so that those things don't happen, so that we can say, okay, you're allowed to do your thing over here, but this energy production of the plant's going to be over here, and we're going to keep a certain amount of distance in between the two. All of these things are problems that can be solved. The same way I'm right now solving a big problem for years now, and they can see it, and when they drill into the ice and stuff, they can see it. They know what's going on. Carbon end of the spectrum is rising. Well, what does that mean the oxygen end of the spectrum is doing? Wake up, people. Everything on this planet either absorbs oxygen like we do, and we breathe out dioxide. And plants are the same way, only they don't have a set of lungs. They either absorb oxygen and breathe out dioxide, or some plants absorb dioxide and breathe out oxygen. What if what I'm telling you is the carbon problem that they're talking about? Some people want to call it faults and this and that and the other. But hey, when you drill into the ice core and you can see a spike in the carbon and it hasn't been there for 600,000 years, I got to say, yeah, we probably have something to do with that. I mean, just saying. But what if we could correct that by simply getting away from the fossil fuel that's polluting us anyway with carbon monoxide? If you hook, our atmospheric bubble is 2.5 miles high. If you hook enough mufflers into this bubble, what's going to happen? Okay? At least my way, the worst thing that could happen is it gets a little smoky and you kind of choke on it a little bit, but it's not going to kill you. Okay? With carbon monoxide, you're looking at death. I mean, that's what it does. So my whole point of this whole post is to just give people a different perspective, to make people understand there's different ways of looking at everything. Not everything's cut and dried. And I want to, it's one of my favorite things. I love Einstein. I like physics. I like, Stephen Hawking's, and oh my God, Morgan Freeman's Through the Wormhole. I could die for that program. I can't even find it on the TV anymore. I love that program because it puts different perspectives into people's minds about a lot of different things. And quite frankly, it's like my dad said, in order to learn, you have to learn how to learn. It's kind of, he loved Chinese puzzles, and that's what I like about Mensa Test. To me, a Mensa Test is kind of like a Chinese puzzle. But anyway, this is an Einstein quote, and I just want to read it to you because I think it's important that people hear this quote. Raise new questions, explore new possibilities, regard old problems from a new angle. That was Einstein. And he's had several quotes that are similar to that, where he's telling people, hey, if you get stumped on a problem, start looking at the problem differently. Mensa Test is great about that, guys. If you're one of those people that likes puzzles and you like to try to solve a puzzle, oh, you'll love Mensa Test. Matter of fact, I'm going to give just for craps and giggles, I'm going to give y'all a really easy one right off the top of the bat. Although, wait a minute, I gotta be upfront about this. Is not an easy question, but it's easy for me to give it to you. We'll put it that way, and it's off a Mensa Test. Okay. You have a pie. You're only allowed to make 3 cuts on that pie. How do you make 3 cuts on the pie and get 8 equal portions? And you may want to look up equal in the dictionary. That's a little bit of a hint. Anyway, I love y'all. God bless y'all. If any of this rings as true to you, if you think that maybe old Kenny may be onto something, maybe there's a better way forward than our. And I'm not saying you just cut off fossil fuel altogether, because of course we know we can't do that. any more than we could implement other things altogether and expect them to work. Look at the trouble they're having with wind turbines. You know, if they're not breaking or falling down, they're leaking oil. Or, I mean, you know, there's all kinds of, which, hey, my oil could be in the wind turbine and it wouldn't destroy the land that's underneath it at least. But they whack birds out of the air and they do all kinds of other things that are just not, they're just detrimental to the land. Now, answer me this. What about a huge hemp farm is detrimental? That's converting dioxide to oxygen the whole time it's there. The coal burning facility that produces the electricity from the bulk of the plant, okay, it captures the hydrogen gas off the top of that burn. What is that doing that harms? Any dioxide that's produced in that plant, especially if it's right there where the plants are being grown, they love dioxide. They're just going to get bigger and grow better and eat more dioxide. You follow me? You can look at any old timers back in the old day marijuana growers guide, and it'll tell you that. They used to tell people are stupid too. Some people actually did this, but they used to tell people if you're going to grow it indoor to set up a wood burning stove and pump the smoke inside your growing chamber. Brilliant. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm a well-read guy. I read about all kinds of different stuff. I'm not the kind of person that, that sticks to one category or another, but this is a little something I know a lot about, and I honestly believe it's an answer. It's a really, really good answer to a lot of our major problems. And for that reason, I just wanted people to know about it. I want people to be open-minded, because it takes people being open-minded in order to combat what the brainwashing of the oil conglomerates and the war machines, the industrial military complex is doing to humanity. We human beings need to figure it out and stick together. We need to find out that there's a better way. We need to spread that better way around. If I've said anything in this post that you feel is redeeming, and you would like to do something to spread the concept that I'm spreading around, then please, people, spread the concept. I don't talk like this just to hear my own head rattle. I talk like this because I know that the stuff that I'm saying is true, and the truths that I'm telling are things that need to be spread around. If these truths don't get spread around, then how is anybody going to know? Honestly, you've got people out there that want to sell you oil, right? And they, quite frankly, don't care how they come about that oil. If it requires fracking that destroys the land and the water, that's what they're going to do. And the reason they do that is because they somehow can't seem to get their head out of their butt enough to realize that, you know what, they have the refining process, they have the distribution process, they have the they have the stuff that's necessary to take my concept and incorporate it into their concept. So the question is, why aren't they already doing that? Why aren't they already taking my concept, which turns dioxide into oxygen, and using that instead of what they're doing? I mean, I just want to get through to just a few of them, a handful of these people that are in the oil industry that can actually change things and make them wake up to what it is that I'm saying. They could be raising a plant that converts dioxide to oxygen, that produces just as much oil as they're pumping out of the ground, and in the process creating all kinds of jobs for all kinds of people. And I don't understand why they're not already doing it. I get quite frustrated at the fact that they're not already doing it. Every day that goes by, I go, when are they gonna catch on? What is it about the oil that they want to go to the point of fracking it? in order to produce it, and that they don't care about what it does to people. What is it about it? I'm talking about killing, well, I'm going to say at least 7 birds with one stone. You listen in, hear me out. Okay, the desalination factories that are in the ocean that can be moved from point A to point B, that can be exchanged because they're made to be interchangeable, that can be tugboated out of bad weather, brought back in the same kind of way oil derricks already are being done. Okay, so only a lot easier because we want to make them to where they would be easy for that to be done. All right, so what part of this do they not get? Okay, you get energy from the ocean. 1. You get clean water from the ocean. 2. You have energy from the sun in the most natural form it can come, photosynthesis. 3. You have the production of oil, energy that is abundant as long as there's a sun in the sky. 4. You have energy of or compressed gas, hydrogen. 6. You have air conditioning of homes that does not affect the ozone layer. 7. Now I'm going to ask you something. Aside from the fact that they can make clothes from it, they can make food for fodder for animals, they can do, and there's a lot of different things that can be done. And every animal, and believe me, they tried to test it during 1938 to try to prove how harmful it was, and all they ever kept coming up with was that it was the exact opposite. It actually made every animal that ever ate it healthier. All right, so let's get to what I just said. I just gave you 7 good purposes for this plant. Okay? Energy from the ocean, clean water, energy from photosynthesis, a natural form of energy from photosynthesis, oil that can be used in fuels for vehicles or lubrication or grease or whatever else that they use fossil fuel for today. And I didn't even add plastic that's biodegradable, okay, rather than the kind of plastic that somebody told me 300 tons, and I'm thinking it's 30 tons that are being dumped into the ocean every year now. Okay, didn't even say it. Okay, and then hydrogen gas, compressed gas, and guess what? When it burns, the only toxic thing that it produces is water. Well, is water toxic? No. In other words, it doesn't produce anything toxic. And I'm telling you, it just kills me because here's all of these energies and all of these solutions to things. The ozones that are dying because we use aerosol, freons, and what have you. If you put in-ground homes prior to the irrigation of this product, then what you have is a completely air-conditioned home without any kind of aerosol, ozone-depleting chemical being used. That's 7. Okay. What's God's biblical number? Any guesses? Anybody out there thinking for themselves right now? That's 7, isn't it? Isn't 7 God's biblical number? Yes, it is. Look, I love you guys. God bless y'all. And if you listen to this and you took it to heart and you really, really want to think about doing something that you can do to change the future, it's going to be spreading this concept around. I'm telling you right now, the warmongers don't want you to spread it around. Why? Because they want to continue doing what they're doing. The oil mongers don't want you to spread it around. Why? And don't ask me why they don't, because actually a lot of their equipment that they already own could be incorporated into my concept. So don't ask me what the hell they're thinking. They should have been on this a long time ago. And I quite frankly, I got to say, they knew about it in 1938. And at the perils of their own children, they ignored it. That's sad, isn't it? I mean, to me, that's really, really, really sad. in a way, you can't blame them because they had billions when it was unusual to have millions invested. But at the same time, hey guys, isn't it time? You've known about this for a long time. Isn't it time? I mean, really. Don't the Syrians want to go home before you destroy their land with fracking? Can't you do this instead, just to see how it works out? Can't you put desalination factories pumping clean water into Syria for farming and allow them to try to grow this product to see if this product can produce the oil that you need it to produce? Isn't there just before you destroy the land, before you destroy the water, before you do all those things that are just evil, and you know they're evil. I don't have to tell these oil mongers it's evil. They already know it is. What we got to do as a people is we got to band together, share this information, and we've got to force it on them. My name is Kendon Curtis. This came to me in a dream, like all of my stuff comes to me in a dream when I know it's true. You know, I had a dream when I saw some people jumping from a fiery building that was on fire. Why don't they just have, when the fire alarm goes off, a belt they can put around their waist that slowly ascends them to the ground? Well, guess what I saw just the other day in a post? Somebody took that same concept and they're using it for deer hunters. So when a deer hunter falls out of his stand, he slowly descends to the ground, so he's not hanging at the top of a tree for hours, for waiting on somebody to trying to blow on a whistle, waiting for somebody to come save him. My point, okay? This could be done at least as high as 10, 15-story buildings. And if you've ever watched somebody jump 10 stories to their death, you'd understand why I have this dream. Hey, there's a way that could have been avoided. And, you know, and here it is again. I'm going to say this so people comprehend where I'm coming from. That concept alone, think about what I'm saying, if that was signed into building code and it was law and I had the patent on that concept, would I have got rich? My gunshot detectors, you don't see them in schools, do you? You know why? Because I just conceived it a short time ago. When India.gov.edu attached their attachment to my post, I knew they were going to steal my intellectual property. There was no point in me even going any further with it. But imagine if I had had that signed into law and I had the patent on not the gunshot detector itself because they're already made, but the whole wiring schematic and system that would open up a teacher's safe during a active shooter alarm, thereby relieving every single parent. What's a parent's concern about teachers having day-to-day access to guns? A teacher. Oh, a student might steal a gun. Okay, overpower the teacher. The teacher might go bonkers. Right? They don't want them to have day-to-day access to their guns. My invention eliminated that completely out of the equation. And then some post from India.gov.edu stole that concept from me when I was sending it person to person to one of my best friends to ask him if he would do a wiring schematic for me so that I could go pursue getting it patented. I sent that post to Jim Jordan on July 3rd after that happened to me and explained to him what my concept was. Never heard a word back from him. But I did send that post to Jim Jordan on July 3rd, and he got that post. And I'm hoping that if somebody does steal my intellectual property, they will use my case as an international case of what's going on with intellectual property. Jim Jordan, if you get wind of this, you heard it. I sent it to you on July 3rd. It was just after they posted their India.gov.edu crap to my intellectual property. And hey, something needs to be done about this stuff. Something needs to be done about it. But this isn't about me. My point is, what if I had got that patented? What if I had got that signed into law so it needed to be in every school in America? Do you think I would maybe have became a billionaire? Let alone the desalination factories. You see? I'm not saying this stuff for personal gain. I'm saying this stuff because I get it in dreams. My dreams come from God. And God's telling me in my heart to share it with the world. You get it? There's no greed here. I'm doing what I'm doing because the world needs this information. People can call you whatever you want. I'm not psychic. I'm not. I've called a lot of deaths in my day, but I never felt like it was psychic. I always felt like, hey man, if you keep doing that on that motorcycle, it's going to kill you. I just felt like, geez, anybody could have figured that out, And I'm sure you all probably know similar people. They went around acting crazy on a snowmobile or a motorcycle, and you said, hey, if you keep doing that on that motorcycle, that snowmobile, I've done that 4 times in my life. I've called it 4 times. And other people could say that about people they saw getting involved with drugs. Man, if you keep doing this, it's going to kill you. You don't have to be psychic to figure that out. And I don't feel like I am. But these dreams are different. Every time I have one of these dreams, and I got to say, one of them started with a family member dying. And I had just read a book by a lady named Jean Dixon, and it was called Guided by the Light. And as I was reading the book, she was talking about the angels weaving the fabric of life and how beautiful it was and how awe-inspiring and unbelievable anyway. And I kind of was like, in my imagination, I was kind of like, well, what was that, It's in a book, But I was, what was that? So I didn't get it. Well, shortly after that, when my grandmother Curtis, who was always, never sat idle ever, even when she was playing a board game, for goodness sake, she was knitting mittens for one of her great-grandkids. She just never sat idle ever. And I got this dream. It was more vivid and more, and I've had them since, but it was more vivid and more colorful and more clean and more this and more that. I can't even describe to you. But it's weird. It started out like, bubble wrap? You know what I'm talking about, bubble wrap? You pop it when you're a kid. Pop, 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 pop. Okay. Well, it was kind of like that, only it was woven, interwoven. Okay. And it was like every bubble that you went into was a scene from your life. But if you went, and you could go in any direction, but any direction that you went into, you could see how something in your life had touched somebody else's life. And then you could go from there to another, and you could see how your life touched that life, touched that life, touched that life, touched this life, touched that life, touched this life. And if you stayed in your own realm and you kind of like, I want to stay where my life is and the different experiences throughout my life, then you could go from life experience to life experience to life experience and see those, right down memory lane, if you will. And as I was having the dream, it would just be getting more and more and more intense. And right at the very end of the dream, I was going out of a bubble, window, whatever you want to call it. You could fly through it. And I looked down, and I realized I was looking down at a table that my grandparents had when I was a kid. And there was a dolly on the table. And my grandmother used to always put dollies on tables. It was just something she did, She could sit maybe a drink down without making a ring or whatever, But I was like, that's Grammy's table, And it was such a shock to me that it woke me out of the dream. And the first thought that came to my mind was, Gene Dixon's book, Guided by the Light, and my grandmother showing me what that was. And that's something. And I've had other dreams where they were, you know, biblical in nature. If nothing else, the best way to describe it, or just really, really important to what's going on at the time. Something you needed to know, something that needed to be brought to you, and so forth. And I've heard other people. I always kind of looked at that like that's just something that happened to me, and it doesn't happen to other people. Other people don't get that, But I'm finding out more and more, especially like through this site here, Praying Medic, that yes, other people do get it, and I'm not the only one. And dreams have meaning sometimes. Dreams have, hey, they just, I have this theory that some dreams are, I don't even know how to say this to get it right, but, okay, some dreams are like your brain just running case scenarios, kind of like a computer running programs, just so it can solve a problem, And other dreams are absolutely God-given. There's no other way to describe it. And I can usually tell right off after I've woke up from a God-given dream, as opposed to it was the brain running case scenario, And so, I don't want to take up any more time, but I want people to be aware, be conscientious. If you wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning with a really inspirational thing, wake up, write it down. I love y'all. Bless y'all. God blesses y'all. Everybody, especially in this forum, everybody knows there's a God. He cares about us. He loves us. He wants us to do well. He wants us to be the best that we can do. And he it's up to us. Where we go from here is up to us. What we do with what he gives us is up to us. Every single day and every single action, we choose him or we choose the negative force in the world. And so keep in mind that, hey, not all Muslims are evil, God looked at the races. He said it was good. He even said the Kenites can be saved. So let's go try to save some. I love y'all. We'll see you.